Hey, what's up? It's Chris. Always on my couch. Like I said, there's no other filming location. So it's me and my couch. And my Animal Crossing plushies that I put up for this video. Just for some diversity. We're gonna do a book breakdown today. Let's go! Book breakdown! First book breakdown. Okay, so I have my handy dandy notes on this tiny memo pad to remember the names, and then I bookmarked some pages, mainly because there's like one section in this book that bothered me, and so I want to go over it. Spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. I'm gonna spoil the entire plot of this book. I'm serious. What am I spoiling? This. Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. I think I just saw something that I didn't notice, so I read the books without the dust covers because I take them back and forth to work and I don't want to bust the dust covers. I don't think I've actually seen the back of this, and I'm really bothered. Some of you know I did a rant review about Spell Shop, and I just saw Sarah Beth Durst's name on the back of this book. I'm not even kidding you. Like, what is that? And I was like, there's no way. Because as some of you know, I hated that book. I hated Spell Shop. It was terrible. It's a new favorite. Hemlock and Silver achieves the extraordinary feat of feeling both classic and unique. Masterful storytelling with an unforgettable heroine, creepy magic, and a fantastic cat. I almost wish I hadn't read it so I could read it again for the first time. Sarah Beth Durst. I could care less about that woman's opinion. I mean, that's kind of, I think it's just ironic that she has like a blurb on the back, and I absolutely roasted her poor book. Book breakdown! I'm actually really excited to do this. I've been wanting to do a book breakdown, and I feel like this is the perfect book to do this with, because I did rate this book 4 out of 5 stars, and the only reason I knocked it down a star is because of these little bookmarked parts. We'll get to that. There was a weird moment dead center of this book, and I went, huh? So we'll get into that. But yes, I'm so excited. I'm very, very excited to do a book breakdown with you guys.
Let's do it.
Let me start by reading you the first line of this book. I had just taken poison when the king arrived to inform me he had murdered his wife. What?
What did he say?
The hell? Just a great way to start a book. So, we meet Anya, who's a 35-year-old healer. She's a poisons expert. So, I went into this book kind of thinking it was going to be like a historical fiction or historical fantasy book. And it kind of is, but not in the way that I thought it was going to be. So we're introduced to Anya. She's in her thing. She's just taken distilled chime adder poison. And so basically what it does is it increases your heart rate. She's working on this distillation process to see if she can utilize it to help cure things. Basically, she's looking for cures for poisons that don't have cures at this time. This doesn't ever really give you a time frame, but it's like kind of medieval-ish in a way. There's like kings and stuff. So we get to see her use this a couple of times, and the first time we really get to see her use it outside of on herself is on someone who is having basically an opium overdose, and she like puts the distilled chime adder into somebody's nose and blows inward. Sounds awful, by the way. And it's the fastest way to get it into somebody's like bloodstream / system to get their heart beating a little bit faster to see if you can basically save someone out of flatlining over an overdose. The king basically shows up into her apothecary and is like, hey, and she's like, why the hell is the king here?
I don't want you here, and I don't want you here.
And he basically comes and is like, hey, you're a poisons expert. I briefly remember your father, who is a merchant and has worked with the king before, mentioning that you had, like, saved a horse after it had been bitten by, like, a venomous animal. And she's like, uh-huh.
Yeah, uh-huh.
What are you doing in my space? Where are your guards? What is happening? He basically comes in and he says, I think my daughter has been poisoned. I've had multiple healers come out and take a look at her and do all of these tests, and they can't find out what's wrong with her, and at this point I believe that she is being poisoned. And Anya just looks at him and is like, do you know how rare it is to actually get poisoned? Everyone always thinks it's poison, but most of the time, it's not poison.
Yes, but actually no.
Which is really ironic because the last king, who was absolutely insane, his name is King Bastion, they call him Mad King Bastion, was quite literally poisoned and died. So it's just really ironic instantly. And throughout the book, you get a lot of Anya's internal monologue. Let me pull up an example. It's phenomenal. King basically comes in, says he thinks his daughter's getting something, and then admits to killing his wife. He's like, I killed the queen. I murdered her. And Anya just sits there and is like, okay. And he's like, well, what do you have to say? And her internal monologue is, he's expecting me to see past a murder? How? And why would he care? He could have just said anything about it, and I would have been just as confused and awkward as I am now. And there are many moments where you get Anya's internal monologue, and it is hilarious. It really, brings a comedic edge to this book. Even in these, really funny, serious moments. So you find out the king did murder his wife. It wasn't just speculation. It wasn't just rumor. He did it. And she basically is like, okay, why? Which is a weird question to ask a king, right?
What an odd thing to say.
And he's like, she was in the middle of cutting my youngest daughter's heart out. So he stabbed her. And his youngest daughter also did not live. And so he's out a daughter and a wife. And now his first daughter is sick. And he's assuming at this point someone is poisoning her. And so Anya's like, I mean, I don't really know what I can do for you. And he's like, please just come. And her internal monologue is literally like, if I mess this up and she dies, he can kill me. And then if I can't fix it and then she's just still sick, he can kill me. And then it's funny because she's sitting here staring off into space, internal monologuing this. And he just looks at her and goes, let me guess, you're thinking that if you fail, basically, I'm gonna kill you. He's like, it's not about that. I just want my daughter to be okay. And so she basically isn't really given a choice. She is, but she isn't. And off to go to the kingdom, which is a 3 days travel through the desert. Important information up front. There is a, let me refer to my notes. The religious system is based off animals. So Saint Adder, Saint Toad, Saint Bird, and they all have different, things that they do. So Saint Bird takes care of the deceased. They put them in little birdhouses and let the wind blow the ashes out. That's the religious system. They mention that a decent bit in the book. So basically he posts her up with 2 guards, Javier and Aaron. And I love both of them. Javier is very military, doesn't really speak, formal, a very brooding force. And Aaron is very goofball Kingsguard, just yapping away. I love Aaron. He's hilarious. So he's posted up on that, and Anya leaves with her sister, Isabel, to go look for clothing, to go out, because Isabel's a little fashionista. And so, blah, blah, blah. They go do that. They come back. All of a sudden, someone's running towards Anya, and her bodyguards are like, what the hell's going on? Someone comes and finds Anya. Healer Michael sends someone, and someone who has been smoking Lotus, which is the opium crisis in their town. So she shows up and basically cures this guy, blows the distilled chime adder venom up his nose, and then tries to get his heart rate going, and it doesn't work. He dies. It's a situation. They finally leave to go to the kingdom, and I will say another reason I knocked a star off this book was because the travel through the desert to get to the kingdom to see the king's daughter dragged on for way too long.
How long is this going to take?
So they like go through the desert, the camp day 1, they eat with the king. They go through the desert, she gets up at the front of the line, talks to the king because they're worried about assassins and all this stuff. Camp for the night, eat dinner. She overhears someone mentioning like, oh, well, what if it's the king's mistress? She like freaks out about it. She's like really bad at talking to people. I feel that girl. Third day, traveling through the desert, up at the front with the king. Like, it just went on for way too long. I missed some steps. Let's back it up a little bit. There is a moment that, in the beginning, that talks about how Anya got into being, like, a poison expert. Which is her cousin Anthony, when they went and lived with her aunt and uncle for a while, ate hemlock and died within 2 hours. And basically she was like, I don't understand, there's no cure for this. And then she just got really obsessive and mad over the fact that there wasn't a cure for hemlock. And then basically, like, there wasn't a cure for a lot of things. And so she just kind of, like, set out on a hyperfixation of, like, looking into that. And so her teacher at the time, Scanned, who is referenced multiple times in the book, who isn't ever really seen in the book at all, for the record. Like, he's mentioned in, like, past tense. He is still alive, but he's never, like, seen on the page. Was her teacher at the time, and so he basically, like, dives into this stuff with her as a child. So there's some background context, because I was totally blanked out on that. For the record, the current king's name is, King Randolph. He's, like, a part of the story, but not really. Very complicated. So she makes it to the castle. She gets introduced to some of the maids, shown around the castle, shown to her room. Now I'm going to give you very little context after this because of what happens going forward. So we're introduced into the castle. She sees her room. She sleeps for the night. They go and meet Snow in the morning. Snow basically is very friendly 12-year-old with kind of a weird suspicious air around her, like she knows something that nobody else knows, thinking that she's being smarter than all the adults in the room. She asks some questions, they try to just get to know each other. Anya and the king go down and meet Lady Sorrel, who is Mad King Bastion's mistress. And so they just call her Aunt Sorrel because she's lovely. Just a lovely little old crazy lady. And she's great. We go through a lot of, like, going over Snow's symptoms and trying to figure out what's going on with her. And just looking around, talking to the cooks, looking in the kitchens, making sure that there's no, like, lead in the plates, cups, silverware, stuff like that. I'm rushing this because this is apparently not the forefront of the story, which blew my mind. So we get to a point where Anya is just stumped. She doesn't know what's going on. Snow's been throwing up periodically. She walks in on one of the days that she's throwing up, still can't find anything. And this is where the book kind of took a weird turn. Basically, Snow's out in the courtyard by herself. Anya's sitting out in the courtyard, just stumped as hell, trying to figure out what could be causing this. And Snow picks up this, like, apple and just starts feverishly eating this apple in the courtyard. Weird as hell. And Anya's like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Give me that shit. She starts freaking out. This kid is freaking out over this apple and trying to shove as much apple in her mouth as humanly possible. And before Anya, like, grabs it out of her hand. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, who gave you this? And it's like this weird, glossy, just strange-looking apple at this point. She's like, this could be what's poisoning you. What are you doing? Like I said, Snow just kind of, like, freaks out. The king is also, like, left by this point, by the way. He's off to do a merchant deal. And just, he's gone. Don't worry about him. She takes it back to the workshop, basically does a bunch of tests, can't find anything. Eats the apple. Part of the apple. feeds part of the apple to the chicken, which is like a test subject down there. Test subject is loose, partner is what she calls it. It's really funny. And then she, like, just goes upstairs and is, like, tired. And there's this cat that kind of roams around a little bit. Snow's like, this is my cat. It's like this one-eyed gray cat. He's cute. So she, like, he's in her bedroom when she's up there. And she's like, oh yeah, whatever. And then she trips over the cat. And this is where the book threw me for a loop, because we were being pretty normal, no magical elements, no huge fantasy aspects. I thought this was going to be a little more realistic, looking for poison, a little more scientific kind of fiction fantasy. And then she tripped over a cat into the mirror in the bedroom and fell through the mirror. Okay.
Huh?
So that happened, and it kind of sucker punched me because it didn't feel like there was any lead up into that happening. And then you flip the page, and now the cat is talking.
Okay, sure, yeah, whatever.
It just kind of felt like we were going on a pretty realistic fantasy journey for you to sucker punch me in the face with fantasy. Yeah, it felt like the pocket sand, but it was fantasy, you know?
Pocket sand.
We're gonna backtrack just a little bit, because this is where I don't know if maybe I didn't catch the signs, so I went back and tabbed every time before falling into the mirror that the mirror was mentioned to see if maybe I missed the foreshadowing, or if I genuinely was sucker punched in the face into a fantasy realm. Okay, so the first time we are introduced to the mirrors is getting into her room and getting settled up. So let me read you the first foreshadowing. I don't think this is foreshadowing, we're just gonna ditch these. I will use them later. The wall opposite to the bed was taken up by an enormous mirror, a good 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide, with a gilded frame. I stare at it in mild astonishment. I'd never seen one so large before. Big mirrors are expensive to make. The maid followed my gaze. One of the queens, she said, as if that explained everything. Flip the page. The queens. She nodded. Her hair was making a stealthy play for the cap on her head, and the nod let it gain some ground. Her Majesty came from Silver Sand. All the best mirrors come from there. There were dozens of them in her dowry. All the king's estates have them. So every room in this castle has these mirrors, okay? That is pretty much it. This next page just says that she's distracted, that she didn't really like mirrors very much. That's pretty much it. They just make her feel uneasy, okay? The next time the mirror is brought up, when you are introduced to Snow, officially, it says, a mirror the same size as mine dominated one wall, and Snow herself was seated in front of it, looking small and pale and tired. She's sick. Basically, yeah, they just bring up that that Snow's sitting in front of one of those mirrors, okay? That's pretty much it. They don't really say anything else about this freaking mirror. We go, so that's page 91. So then the next time we get a word about these mirrors, right, is page 124, which is, she's like falling asleep. They're not having a great time. She's not having a good time finding anything wrong with Snow. So she's going to bed, and then she swears she sees something. Okay? Through slitted eyes, I studied the mirror. It looked onto unfamiliar landscape, the humped shapes of furniture gone shadowy and strange. I couldn't see the balcony at this angle, but there! Something glowed, white in the mirror. It took a moment to realize that it was the reflection of a face, and worse, it was the face of someone bending over me. So, basically, she does this whole thing where she's like trying to pretend she's asleep. She sees something in the corner of the mirror. She eventually like freaks out, kicks all the stuff off, looks around. There was no one there. No one's in the room. No one's in the mirror. That's it, okay? That is The last time the mirrors are foreshadowed until we fall face first into the mirror dimension. This is what bugged me a little bit about this book. Was this book good? Yes. Yes. I don't want to come off as this a rant review. I actually had a great time reading this book. At one point, I thought it was going to be really predictable, and as always, T. Kingfisher delivers and hits me with 7 different twists, and I don't know what's happening anymore. We're going to jump ahead. Now we're at falling through the mirror, right? We've fallen headfirst in the mirror dimension. The mirror dimension is like a very steady gray everywhere. Like, there's no distinguishable colors, nothing like that. There's no shadows, or like the shadows are just like a slightly darker gray. There's not really light. The only thing that shows color is directly where the mirror can view. So say this is a mirror, this is the couch. The couch has color, but everything that the mirror can't see, so my entertainment center's over here, that's gray. But it knows it's there, which a little confusing, but we're gonna go with it because it's fantasy, you know? So she's like looking around, and then the fucking cat starts talking. This is me getting sucker punched in the face, because I went, why the fuck the cat talking?
How can you talk?
I just can.
Like, cat wasn't talking before, cat talking now. Great. So she's basically like, I have a concussion. There's no way this is real. And the cat's like, nah, this is real. And so she starts asking questions. And the cat's just kind of a dick. Which, like, if cats could talk, that's pretty accurate. He's like, these questions are unoriginal, blah, 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 blah. So she, like, goes back and forth through the mirror a couple of times, tries to figure some stuff out, realizes that you can get into the hallway. She is in the mirror when the maid walks in, so then the reflection of the maid's in the mirror, but it's like this like weird, like, I don't know how to describe it. The maid walks away from the mirror, and then all of a sudden the body of what the mirror can see just stops right at the edge of the mirror where she's no longer visible. And it just sits there and doesn't move, and Anya's just like, what the hell is going on? That's weird. And then, assuming that she's gone into another room and been in the view of another mirror, she just flips out of existence. It's super weird. So basically, she tries bringing a book from the mirror dimension to the real world. The book eventually disintegrates in her hand. She, like, freaks out. She goes back and forth in between the mirror dimensions, just kind of in the bedroom. Hasn't quite gone and explored a lot. Eventually kind of drifts down into the kitchen area. Realizes that that during the day when you're in the mirror dimension, the things outside still move around. So she's in the kitchen, like, looking around for stuff. And then there's, like, a dough ball on the table. And then when she turns around again, now there's 2 dough balls. Now one of the dough balls is being carried, but there's no figure carrying it around. It's just the ball of dough. Again, didn't quite make sense to me, but again, it's a fantasy realm. It's okay. She basically gets spooked by something and then comes out of the mirror, like, really fast. She, like, hears something walking. Well, when she comes out of the mirror, Javier is walking into the room, and she's, like, half out the mirror, like, oh, shit. She hasn't told anyone about this yet. And so Javier's just sitting there like, what the fuck are you doing? And so begins the masterpiece of the Javier and Anya show. So, these 2 fucking hooligans, man. I love them. Javier doesn't, like, freak out. He's very, like, calm, cool, collected, right? Except that he just looks at her and goes, what the fuck? Oh, so he, like, basically she, like, comes out, looks at him. She's worried about getting, like, accused of being a witch and, like, getting stoned to death. And then instead she just looks at him and goes, you gotta see this, man! And he's like, huh? What the hell are you talking about, right? So she, like, tries to get him in the mirror. It doesn't work. She basically is like, you need to eat the mirror food, the apple from earlier. So she happened to bring, like, a potato from the kitchen. And so she, like, cuts a piece of the potato and makes him eat it. The mirror food, she gets him into the mirror dimension, and he's like super calm, cool, collected. I love Javier. He's such a stellar character when we finally get into the meat of this. Mind you, by the time somebody figures out anything about this mirror dimension, Javier gets introduced to the mirror dimension on page 188. So we're like a good chunk of the way in the book before he gets like introduced to the mirror dimension. So this is also when like kind of a very, very lightly background romance starts. And to be completely honest, I was very much here for it. Because it was, like, so minute, but there was just these little tiny details here and there, and I was like, okay, yeah, they'd be a cute couple, you know, by the end of it. You know, that'd be nice. She shows Javier the mirror dimension. He takes it in stride. Absolute fucking knightsman, okay? Dude's fucking cool as shit. Takes it super cool, basically rolls around in there, comes back out with her, and is like, okay, cool, I want to continue to come into the mirror dimension with you, because I don't know what's going on there, and I'm your bodyguard, and I want to make sure that you're safe, so don't go back in there without me. She's like, you can't stop me. The hell? The love thing kind of happens, right? She asks him if he's gonna tell Aaron, which is the other guard, and this cracked me up for some reason. She goes, are you going to tell Aaron? What? Saints no! He seemed startled by the suggestion. I love Aaron like a brother, but he could no more keep a secret than he could fly. And the fewer people who know about this, the better. Now I really must go. I'll come back as soon as I'm off shift. No, damn it, that's at midnight. I'll come back tomorrow. Because, you know, can't be seen in the ladies' chamber past midnight without catching some assumptions. Which... Bow chicka wow. Anya and Javier go on the, mirror dimension adventure. They find this big-ass hole in the ground. They're like, man, it would take an army to dig this. Super weird endeavor. Anya doesn't tell Javier about Grayling, which is the cat's name, for the record. And just doesn't say anything for the longest time. And I didn't quite understand why. Maybe because she didn't want to overload him. Because I get that. There's a lot going on. So they go through the mirror dimension, they check stuff out, they're testing the rooms, seeing what they can do. Grayling kind of like comes back after Javier leaves. They sleep for the night. She goes to the workshop, tries to figure stuff out. Grayling comes. And she kind of like coaxes some more information out of the cat. Being like, well, if someone wanted to murder Snow, like, why would they be feeding her the apples? Why wouldn't they just, like, speed the process up? Yada, yada, yada. And you find out that Grayling knows a lot more than he's letting on. And this cat, being a cat, and absolutely, I feel like T. Kingfisher wrote an angsty cat perfect, just, like, will not give you information. Even bribing doesn't work. He's just like, meh, you know? So, she's like, if Snow's gonna murder someone, you have to tell me. And he's basically like, she's not trying to murder anyone, no one's necessarily trying to murder her. It's complicated. You find out that sometimes the, like, gray blobs, so when someone walks past a mirror and their person stays on the other side of the mirror, can sometimes, what Grayling calls, be awake. We find out later what that actually means. Javier comes back, and they go explore the mirror world for a little bit. At one point, she tries to bring, like, a hummingbird that's been out of view of a mirror, and she, like, takes it and puts it in her pocket. And then when she tries to go back out the mirror at some point, she can't. Is, like, stuck. And then tries to, like, force the hummingbird through, and it just won't go, and then she kind of turns this weird gray color, like she like kind of loses it, and then Javier's like, stop, you almost just like turned gray, it was freaking weird. So I can't say that really gets explained in this, and if it did, I missed it. So they make the assumption that because she can't take the hummingbird through the mirror, it's most like because the hummingbird in the real world is still alive, And so the mirror dimension one can't leave the mirror. We find out a little bit later it's kind of like that, but it's also that you have to eat more of the mirror dimension food to bring things back and forth. And depending on how much you eat is how sick you get when you leave the mirror. You find out later, so they're like coming in and out of the mirror dimension, and they find this, like, it's like a food or a flower, I can't remember right now, on the ground outside of one of the mirrors in Anya's room, and she realizes that Snow has been watching her, the 12-year-old that's sick, has been watching her while she sleeps, and that kind of, like, troubles her, and so they're trying to figure out what to do, and Javier just, like, talk to her, tell her you know about the mirror dimension and see if she cracks under the pressure. She, like, is sitting in the room considering, like, how she's gonna bring this up to Snow, right? Not gonna be easy. And then she kind of hears someone outside the door, and she's like, I don't want to talk to anyone right now. I just don't want to deal with anyone. So she steps into the mirror dimension because she's, like, hiding from a maid. I'm not even kidding you. She's like, I don't want to talk to anyone. Into the mirror dimension. Hides around a corner. This is where we get to figure out what mirror gelds are and how they're made. And let me hit you with this freaking description. There's a little pocket mirror on the nightstand, and the maid picks it up and then kind of does the thing where you, like, hold a mirror and then you can see, like, at an angle, and you put your face in the middle and there's, like, 1,000 of you. She does that with the mirror in the bedroom. Half of her, unseeing, turned the object this way and that, the mirror, for the record context. Apparently admiring it. The other half, the gray half, in the mirror dimension, began to shudder and jitter back and forth. Something erupted from the back of her head, a band of flesh like a sharp-edged tumor, and then another one beside it, and another, and then she turned even further, and her face broke into 2 pieces that slid along each other until one eye was half an inch above the other one, and then one of those pieces broke, and she had 3 eyes, and then it broke again, and again. The maid tossed the mirror onto the bed and went to get fresh towels. The way that's described, like, I was, like, late when I read this, and I was like, whoa, what the fuck? I don't know why, I was just thinking of, like, because it's in the gray world, so it's not, like, a crazy, like, blood splatter of stuff. But my internal brain was like, oh my god, like, the skin splitting apart. It just sounded fucking gross. So the lady puts the mirror down and then, like, kind of, like, walks away into the washroom to continue her maid duties. And then we get the woman vanished, presumably as the real one changed out the towels in the washroom. But not all of her vanished this time. I jumped back, startled, as the bands of eyes and hands and fractions of face calved away from the emptiness and crashed to the floor. I expected them to turn to dust the way the mirror stuff did in the real world, but they lay on the ground like slabs of clay from a frustrated sculptor, and then the hands reached out and went creeping over the floor, dragging sections of arms behind them. The faces lay tumbled across each other in a pile that blinked and twitched and moved, the corners of the mouths working madly as if in pain. These parts that have broken off from the mirror, like a optical illusion, I guess, start crawling around on the floor and connecting bits of themselves together. This is what is later referred to in the rest of the book as mirror gelds. And they can just keep attaching themselves together, and they don't necessarily die. You can't really kill them in the mirror dimension. Which is horrifying, for the record. So, she basically freaks out and jumps through the mirror back into the bedroom, because she's like, what the fuck, dude? And the lady's in the washroom, and then she's just sitting there, and then the lady's like, oh, I didn't hear you come in. So nice to see you. And she's like, uh-huh. I just got in. Mm-hmm. Freaking the fuck out. Sweating buckets, right? She later finds the cat. The cat's like, that's the mirror gelds. That's what I was telling you about. So glad you met one. Being an asshole cat. So, it was great. He just, and it was wild because he says, a small one by the sound of it. The parts will all fuse together if you leave it long enough. Horrifying. I hated that. And then she's like, you didn't warn me about those. And he's like, you know, just a asshole. She calls for Javier in the garden to basically explain this discovery to him. And here comes Aaron, trotting along with Javier. And so they can't really talk in private, and so she just starts talking about insects, which apparently is like Javier's ick. He's like, ugh, and then he just like leaves because like I lied, I don't want to do this. And so he just like heads out. And so she's able to tell him about the mirror gelds and that's something that they need to be aware of when they go into the mirror dimension. She then takes Javier through the mirror trying to look for it, and he's looking all around the room. The door is still locked, by the way, and they don't find it. They don't find the mirror geld. And Javier's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, I'm not crazy, bro. There's no way. At one point, they suspect that maybe Lady Sorrel is the one giving Snow the apples. She goes and has, like, tea with her, and then Lady Sorrel's like, oh, you have a sunburn, like, come with me into my quarters, and I have, like, a salve. And she shows up into Lady Sorrel's room, and there is no mirrors. Nothing. She doesn't have any in her room, which is interesting to her. And then she's like, maybe. So then she goes to Javier, she's like, maybe it's Lady Sorrel. And it's not. Thank God, because that little old lady, I like her. She's not like a huge character in this, but she is fun. A very interesting character. Now they kind of go in and they're like, okay, well maybe we go into the mirror world and see if in the mirror world we can find anything in Lady Sorrel's room that would be evidence of that, right? Great idea. Honestly, stellar. So Javier's like, all right, I'm coming with. She's like, nah, I can do it myself. And he goes, can you fend off a poisoner with a knife? And she's like, you have a point and I don't like it. So they go do that and they start walking down the hall. I will read you this because it was very interesting. We were halfway to the stairs when a door opened across the courtyard and a gray figure stepped out of it. I watched the reflection close the door and stand frozen. Begin in Lady Sorrel's room? Javier asks. Yes, wait. The gray figure had begun to walk along the hallway perpendicular to us, with no mirrors in sight. I grabbed Javier's wrist. That one's moving. Javier's head jerked around and he stared at the gray figure. It was a man, and though it was hard to tell in the gray-on-gray twilight of the mirror, I didn't think he was wearing a servant's livery. One of the guards, perhaps. Another door opened to our left, much closer. Javier spun around, drawing his sword. It was another man, and this one seemed to be actually wearing armor. The gray man closed the door and began walking towards us. Javier put himself between me and the newcomer. Sword held up between us. I thought you said they didn't move, he hissed. None of the others did. The first gray man turned the far corner and came down the hallway toward us as well. They both had a steady, measured gait that was somehow more frightening than if they had been charging. Maybe we should just get out of the way, I said. I don't know why they're still there without a mirror, but maybe they're going to another mirror if we just step to the one side. The armored one drew his sword. Or not. So this is when we find out that there are gray mirror figures in the mirror dimension that are sentient to a point. And they're coming after him. So they basically book it. They're out of here. They haul ass back into the real world, fall into a different room. And so they tumble through the thing. Javier tumbles through on top of Anya. And then the maid walks in and is like, oh. And they're in quite the position where it's like, I normally just air the room out, but, sorry to disturb you two. And they're like, wait, no, it's not what it looks like. And it was just, again, the little subplot romance thing where it's just like, they're always, the trope of always falling into each other and it's always making it look like a romance when currently there is nothing going on until there is something going on. Fucking absolutely stellar in this book. Eventually, Anya tells Javier about Grayling, the talking cat, and then, of course, he struts in and is like, talking about me? Huh? So now Javier's like, oh, cool, more things for my brain to be brain melded out. We find out, eventually, it feels like we lose the plot in this book for a lot of the middle section, because it's a lot of them just kind of exploring around, and I'm like, what happened to, I don't know, finding out what's killing the 12-year-old child in this castle? Like, we know the 12-year-old child's coming into the mirror dimension, and that is affecting her because eating the mirror food makes you really sick when you come out of the mirror and then eat regular people food. We do find that out. But then it's just like exploring the mirror dimension, and it's under the guise of, we're trying to find who's giving her the stuff in the mirror dimension. But it just kind of just felt like we're going off on the mirror dimension adventure, and we kind of just lose the plot for a little bit until eventually we figure out that she confronts Snow and is like, I know about the mirror dimension, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna stop going. She has her. They discuss, so there's a woman, they find out that the queen, it's the mirror queen, is still in the mirror dimension and is like a sentient being, because the queen at one point had like cut herself and somehow blood got on the mirror while she was talking to herself in the mirror, and it made the mirror version of herself become sentient. We go over that. We realize that Snow is being coaxed because she thinks that she can save her little sister because the Mirror Queen has stated that she has her little sister. She doesn't. Her little sister is dead. There was a point where to become a sentient mirror person in the real world, you have to kill your reflection and eat their heart. And at one point, they managed to do that with the youngest sister. And so she put the corpse of the sister in the mirror and then was like, your sister had an accident. I'm trying to make her better. And they sent the mirror version of her sister out into the world. And then they were saying something was weird because the younger sister was getting disorientated in a castle she's known her whole life. And then the actual queen, who knew what was going on, tried to cut her heart out because she knew it wasn't her child. And then the king walked in and then killed the queen, and then both of them were dead, and it's fucking weirdly tragic backstory. There's a lot more depth than I'm providing in this because I'm not sure how to do a breakdown yet. You get all this lore. So we have this moment after getting a lot more of this information, right, that there's sentient mirror people walking around, and Anya's out in the courtyard when a mirror gets dropped onto her head while she's outside. I'm talking literally like on top of the building. Somebody drops a full-size mirror on top of Anya's head. And she falls, it gets dropped on her, so she goes right into the mirror dimension. And the sentient guards are there, the mirror guards. And they like take her and they're like, the queen's requesting you. Because the queen knew about her the whole time. Which blew my mind. This whole new plot line with the queen being alive in the mirror dimension and shit and being like this heinous evil person and all this stuff threw me for a massive fucking loop. I was like, what are you talking about? I thought the mirror guilds were gonna be the bad guy the second they were introduced. And now you're telling me there's evil mirror queen? Blew my mind, let me tell ya. At this point, I don't think I put the book down until I'd finished it at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm flipping the pages, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And basically the queen's like, I have purpose for you, and Snow's in the mirror dimension, and she's just sitting there. And she's like, I need someone to be able to bring real people stuff into the mirror dimension, which is what she's using Snow for, is to bring things from the real world into the mirror world so that she has spots of color and comfortable items because she can't leave the mirror. Because the original queen is dead. Blew my mind, man. They basically lock her down in a dungeon area, and they're like, we can't let you leave, blah, 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 blah. There's a mirror guild in her little cell, and the guys are like, stab it, pull it out. It's like, I imagine it being this big. And then she's sitting there, and she's just like, oh no, I'm doomed. What am I gonna do? And all of a sudden you hear struggling, and then they toss Javier in there like a couple hours later. And she's like, you came back for me. Wait, but he doesn't like me. Subplot romance. Delightful. And they try to figure out a way out of this situation. They get out. They make it down to the mirror version of Lady Sorrel's room, and they find out that Mirror Sorrel is awake and sentient, which is a weird thing to discover because apparently the queen at one point had convinced her that she needed to kill the real version, eat her heart, so that she could do the traveling back and forth. But even the mirror version is just a sweet little old lady, and she went, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. But she's just alone and sentient in the mirror dimension. And it's actually, like, kind of a really sad section of the book. Because I was like, aw, no. It was actually really sad. But there's this, like, fancy little thing. They're trying to get away from the guards. They go up through this, like, basically a servant corridor. And then we are introduced to the 40-foot mirror geld. Oh my god. It's like crammed itself in this corridor, and then it's like trying to beckon them, Javier and Anya, like to follow them. And they like block the guards from like seeing them. And come to find out, the mirror guilds are this like really large amalgamation from the optical illusion between two mirrors, and they form this giant versions of themselves. And they're like, they don't speak, but they can kind of somewhat communicate. And they help Javier and Anya like get back into the real world so that they can try to get Snow. And Snow is in the real world. I'm going to bypass a lot of that because there was a lot of information there with the 40-foot mirror guild, and it was very, very cool. But they get through all of that. They get into the real world, and they're like, Snow, if you quit eating the apples and you just don't go into the mirror dimension anymore, you're going to be completely fine. They explain to her that her little sister is dead, and there's nothing that they can do, and they have to basically have the hard conversation that the Mirror Queen, tricked her and put a corpse in front of the mirror and then played it off. And the reason she hasn't seen her little sister since then is because the Mirror Queen's been lying to her, which is tough to fucking hear for a 12-year-old. And so she just kind of like breaks down and is like, I want to kill her. This is terrible. And she goes, just stay out of the mirror. And I was like, cool, that's going to be the end of the book. The rest of it's going to be like traveling home, whatever. No. Snow ends up going back through the mirror because she's pissed. She has this plan set out. She's eaten like 5 of the mirror apples, which 2 of them almost killed her. And she goes to the mirror and she's eaten 5 of the apples to try and push the Mirror Queen through the mirror into the real world, because there is no actual queen anymore. When she gets shoved through the mirror, she will die and will not be, like, she'll never be back because there is no normal queen, because the normal queen's gone. And so they go in, they do this, like, little battle thing. They call upon the Mirror Guild to come help take the queen out, which was fucking insane. They managed to, with the help of Grayling tripping the Mirror Queen, get her to fall through the mirror, and she disintegrates into dust. And I was like, holy shit. But then Snow falls out of the mirror and is basically dead too. I was like, bro, there's no way they're just gonna kill the 12-year-old right at the end. And this is where Anya's distilled chime adder venom actually comes in handy. So they basically, like, get her up, figure it out, lay her up, get the other healer in the kingdom. She does the distilled chime adder venom and is looking at Javier and is like, is this something I risk? And he goes, she's just about dead anyway, so the only other thing you're gonna do is kill her or she's gonna die. There's, like, either way, it's a lose-lose. Or it works. And so she does it, and after, like, a couple hours, her heartbeat gets a little more steady, and ta-da, she lives, happy ever afters.
Were you killed?
Sadly, yes. But I lived.
When they find out that she's breathing in and she kind of wakes up, everyone's celebrating, it's this giant thing, and then Javier grabs Anya and just fucking kisses her, and it's so cute, dude. It was so cute. And I was sitting there like, cute. It was really fun. So they go and they, like, sleep it off, because it's been an exhausting day, and she's healing, and there's not much more Anya can do, and she wants to go home. And they do a fade to black to her and Javier spending the night together. There is no spicy scenes in this book. It's a fade to black. Thank God. I gotta be in the mood for, like, sex in a book, and it's not often. But I do want to read you the last page because I really enjoyed this. Basically, Javier and Anya are going to stick together. Javier's talking about retiring from the Kingsguard and just being her personal bodyguard, and kind of like dating and stuff. But there was this thing where she wants to go back into the mirror world and talk with the mirror guilds because they can kind of speak and see if she can learn some more. So they leave the book really open-ended. But this text I enjoyed because it said, and there was Javier. Of course, maybe it wouldn't work out. Maybe we'd find that if we weren't fighting for our lives, we didn't have much to say to each other. Maybe we'd be happy beyond our wildest dreams. And I like that ending because as she is an older woman and Javier is an older man, and they both just never married, they are both very much like enjoying it while it lasts, but also understanding that even if it doesn't last, doesn't mean that it's not going to continue to be enjoyable until the end. And I liked that because that is how relationships are sometimes. Like, maybe it'll work out, maybe it only worked out because of the situation we were in, but regardless, it worked out for a time, and hopefully it continues to work out later. It was nice. I actually had a lot harder time with this breakdown than I would like to admit. I've cut a lot of things out of what actually happened to this book. There's so much more that happens in this book. But if you made it this far, but you're still interested in reading it, there is so much more that goes on in this book that I missed or didn't talk about. There's a lot more scenes with Scand, the teacher, in some, like, some, like, flashbacks. Jesus. There's more flashbacks with, like, Scand. There's a lot more information about the town. There's more dialogue and discussion about Isabel. You find out more about Javier's family. There's more. I didn't even bring up the fact that, like, Snow has, like, a day-to-day nurse that is constantly around her. There is another twist at the tail end of this correlating to her nurse that I'm just gonna not bring up. So if you do want to read this, even though I've given you basically the entire plot, you will find things that I didn't mention or maybe even got wrong because everyone perceives things differently. So, like I said, this was really hard to make. I thought doing a book breakdown would be really fun, and I'm gonna be so honest, I had a miserable time. But I think I had a miserable time because this book was so complicated to do a breakdown on, and I didn't even realize it would be. So I'm gonna have to edit all of this, and I know a lot of people do book breakdowns and they're like an hour long. I just didn't realize how much energy that actually takes because I'm very casual. So that's my book breakdown. If you made it this far, thank you for joining me. Have a good day.